Welcome to Deep Thought. Some are shepherds. Now, I talked about the herd, and that represents a significant part of the population. But there are some who are not really a part of the herd. There are some who are shepherds. What is a shepherd? The shepherd moves the herd along. Like that herd is big. And that herd is going along doing its thing. There has to be a shepherd that tells it where to go. Now, we talked about the human herd, eat, sleep, fuck, whatever. I ain't say the fuck part yesterday, though. I know y'all not used to me cursing on this channel. But let's just call it what it is. Eat, sleep, fornicate. See, I cleaned it up. But, that's most people. But if we had a society like that, nothing to get done. So we have shepherds. Who are the shepherds? The shepherds are the religious leaders. The shepherds are the politicians. The shepherds are the billionaires who pay the politicians, who in turn control the police force, who are part of the shepherds. And some of that too. That's a for some of those are like, even those, they can be a part of the herd and just don't know it. So it's deep. It's nuanced. Y'all know I like that word, nuanced. All of life is nuanced. It's more of an art than a science. So you got the shepherds are those ones who lead us along. Like the obvious ones are religious leaders. In fact, in some traditions, particularly some Christian traditions, they may even be known as shepherds. They shepherding people along. They moving them along. They saying, you go here, you eat this or that. The media. I don't think people have a really good idea how much a good marketer really moves the population. Like a good marketing company, a good marketing company can change the world. Like if you get a group of marketing companies and they say, we want to conquer the world. One of those like, I don't know, James Bond type of things. They say, we want to conquer the world. What they do? They'll sit back and just say, okay, let's come up with a campaign. Okay, let's change this. Because all marketing is propaganda. It's telling you how to think. But in telling people how to think, you're telling them how to move. So if you say, you get some marketers and say, hey, everybody needs to buy this, I don't know, red shirts. Okay, like in the United States. If you say, okay, everybody to show their patriotism need to buy these red shirts. Just buy red or blue, red, white, or blue, and everybody walk around with it. I guarantee you give like the top, especially if the top marketing companies and advertising companies are working together on it, especially with the use of media, commercials, everything. You point to it, I guarantee in a few months that's all everybody's wearing. In fact, a show that I check out is The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu. Y'all gotta check that out. That's some deep stuff. I can actually do some work on that one. You want to check that out because interesting thing, all the classes in that program, in that world, in that dystopia, they color coded. For the most part, all the men are wearing black. The commanders and the soldiers. The handmaids are wearing red. The wives are wearing like what is it? It's bluish. It's bluish. It ain't quite blue. I ain't sure. Aqua, or I'm not even sure what that color is, to be honest. The cooks, the Marthas as they call them, they wearing something. Boom. So it's possible that could happen. It would just take some marketing campaign to get people like wearing certain colors as a show of whatever. I guarantee it could happen. I'm surprised somebody hasn't thought about it. Well, actually, somebody hasn't thought about it because then they wouldn't buy other colors and people would lose money. But I'm just saying, hypothetically. Those are the shepherds. Whoever moves the people as far as thinking are the shepherds. And the way to control the masses is to control the shepherds. Let me say that again. The way to control the masses is to control the shepherds. Because the masses really going to adapt. The masses, the herd will adapt to whatever the shepherds want to do. And in fact, if you look at the history, if you look at revolution or political movements in any country, whether it's the United States, the USSR, the former USA at the southern tip of Africa, used to be called the Union of South Africa, or Nigeria, wherever there's a media, wherever there is, wherever you have religious leaders, politicians, the media, police forces. If you look at any change, it's usually by different groups doing it, different groups who are trying to be the shepherd. And then there's another group in there too, but I'm going to talk about them tomorrow. But whenever you get these different groups, that's all they trying to do, because what happens is the herd adapts to whatever's there. I'll use the U.S. for example. I'll use The Handmaid's Tale for example. Anybody who's familiar with that saw the shepherds, some religious fanatics take over. Most of the people probably weren't down for what these religious fanatics were for, but, they probably went with it. In fact, you'll find that in any place, any revolution, the masses just want to eat, sleep, and fornicate. And as long as you don't mess with them too much, they'll go with whatever. Like, this whole country will turn, like a lot of people have talked about, not so much now, but I remember when the Soviet Union was still a political entity. And people were talking about communism. And, before the Soviet Union fell, people were talking about communism. So, if this country had, become communist, I guarantee most people, you would have had some people resist, of course, but the overwhelming majority, as long as you kept them fed, didn't interfere with their lives too much, would have went along with it. And that's the key. In fact, some smart people who are trying to change the social order, they usually not only use the masses, but make sure they benefit from it. And usually there's a problem there. This is getting into another conversation, but if there's a problem there, that's because the herd, they haven't taken care of the herd. You gotta keep them. You gotta keep them eating that grass. You gotta keep those. You gotta keep them eating that grass. You gotta keep their bellies full. It's when you start bothering with it, you got problems. They need to have me tell. Shit, people need to pay me $1 million. I can tell them how to keep their populations under control. But you got the shepherds who are able to do that. And in fact, if someone were to rise within the system and they could figure out how to do it, they usually make a lot of money. Like, you get some of these billionaires now, these tech billionaires, if you really pay attention, they can make a lot of money if they develop a way to keep the masses moving along. Facebook, anyone? How many people are a part of that and following that along? Or like some of these tech companies, everybody can get into it. Yeah, these are shepherds. And it changes stuff. It changes stuff. Because then, so you have the herd. They're just ordinary people. You have the shepherds that set up the institutions and move them along. Keep them under control. Keep them from busting down the fence. In fact, I'm going to say, and I'm going to really get into this in the next one. I'm going to really get into that whole busting down the fence thing. But the shepherds, they supposed to keep everything moving swimmingly along. So it's very important what they do. Or at least from the shepherd's point of view. And usually any conflicts are just conflicts between two groups of shepherds. In fact, any revolution, everything, as I said earlier, anything is really just two groups of elites or shepherds who are trying to fight each other. But then there's a third group out there. I talked about the herd. I talked about the shepherds. There's a third group. And I'll talk about that in my next one. Peace and blessings. think on this.